I'll tell you the story of how the original got written first, because it's quite interesting. Alphonse Daudet was a journalist in Paris. Now, I'm very bad on dates, but it was end of the century, end of the 19th century. And he got fed up with the rat race, and he decided to do what a lot of people do. They give up in England and they come to Wales thinking it's all going to be very, very easy, and as soon as they have a bad winter they bugger off home. And that's what his colleagues thought would happen. He went down to Provence and bought an old mill, there it is, there on the wall, and an old windmill, and said goodbye to them in Paris and just went off to Provence. And they said, oh, you'll be back, you'll be back. And he didn't go back. He went down there, and when he got there, he was so pleased with himself, he wrote a description of his arrival and sent it to the newspaper and to his colleagues. And they thought, oh, this is rather good, so they published it. And it was so popular, he had to go on writing about all his neighbours and what was going on in Provence, and that's how the book and later ones came about, because it was a sort of instant bestseller in newspapers first and then as a book. So what I thought I'd do is read the introductory chapter, because the description of his arrival I read when I was at school, and my French was absolutely appalling. So when I went to school, when I got to the grammar school, I was doing German, and it was wartime. And we got, first of all, they dropped a bomb on the gasworks next to the school, so the school closed. And then I got evacuated, and only French was done there, which I didn't understand, because I missed the first 6 months of the French. And eventually I got back to my school, and they said, well, you've got a choice. You can do a second language because you're in that level, but because you have got such a strange beginning, you better choose which one you want to suffer. So you either can do, I didn't want to do Latin because I wanted living languages, and they said, you can either start French again from the beginning and jump into the middle of German and see how you get on, or you can do it the other way around. And I was still pining for the German I'd learnt when I first went to school, so I said, well, I'll do German. It wasn't a very good idea, because the teacher wasn't my nice teacher I had. She was she was a real Nazi, actually. She was horrible. And she frightened me so much that I never got it beyond a failed mark right through for German. And I'm good at languages, so that's... Okay, I'm going to read the description called Moving In, which is when he arrived there. And the first sentence of it has lived with me ever since my struggling in school days, and that's why there are rabbits on the front. This is really his mill. I got a photograph of the mill off the internet, and I painted a picture and added the rabbits. You'll see why. It was the rabbits that were surprised. For so long had they seen the door of the mill closed, the walls and the platform invaded by weeds, that they had come to believe that the race of millers was extinct, and, having taken a liking to the place, had made of it a kind of strategic headquarters, a rabbit mill of the Gemaps. On the night of my arrival, there were, without a word of a lie, at least a score of them sitting in a circle on the platform and warming their paws in the moonlight. I had barely the time to half open a window when, whoosh, the whole troop decamped, all their little white behinds scurrying tails up into the bushes. I hope they come back. Someone else who was astonished to see me was the first-floor lodger, a sinister old owl with the pensive expression of a philosopher, who had inhabited the mill for 20 years. I found him upstairs, sitting motionless and upright on the mill shaft, surrounded by rubble and fallen tiles. A round eye regarded me for a moment. Then, alarmed at not recognising me, he began to shout, "Hoo, hoo!" and to shake his grey, dusty wings painfully. These wretched philosophers, they never brush their clothes. Never mind, such as he is, with his blinking... With his blinking eyes and his sulky expression, I liked this silent lodger more than any other, and I made haste to renew his tenancy. As before, he keeps the whole of the upstairs of the mill, with an entrance through the roof, and I have reserved for myself the ground floor, a small whitewashed room, low and vaulted like a monastery refectory. It is from there that I am writing to you, with my door wide open, letting in the good sun. In front of me, a small wood of sparkling pine trees tumbles down to the bottom of the slope. On the horizon, the delicate peaks of the Alps cut into the sky. No noise, just faintly from afar the notes of a flute, a curlew over the lavender fields, the bell of some mules on the road. All this beautiful Provençal countryside lives and breathes light. You think I miss your noisy, dark Paris? This is exactly what I was looking for. A warm, scented patch of land, 1,000 miles from newspapers, hackney carriages, fog. And what objects of beauty around me! It is scarcely a week now since I moved in, and already my head is overflowing with impressions and memories. Only last night I watched the flocks being brought down from the mountain to a farm at the bottom of the hill, and I can assure you that I would not exchange that sight for all the first nights that you have attended this week in Paris. Just imagine, I have to tell you that in Provence it is customary, when the hot weather arrives, to send the flocks up into the Alps. The animals and people spend 5 or 6 months up there, sleeping under the stars in the lush grass. Then at the first touch of autumn they come back down to the farm and return to grazing comfortably on the little grey rosemary-scented hills. So yesterday the flocks were coming home. From the first thing in the morning the farm gate was wide open. The sheep barns were full of fresh hay. Hour by hour they said, now they're at Aiguille, now at Paradou. Then suddenly towards evening a great shout, there they are. And down in the distance we see the flock approaching in a glory of dust. All the track seems to be walking with them. The old rams come first, looking fierce with their prominent horns. Behind them the main flock of sheep. The ewes rather weary, their lambs at their feet. The mules with their red pom-poms carrying panniers with day-old lambs that they rock as they walk. Then the dogs, all sweaty with their tongues hanging right to the ground. And the 2 great rascals of shepherds in rough woolen red cloaks that reach to their heels. All this files happily past us and is swallowed up by the gateway, their many feet pattering in the heavy rain. The commotion in the house has to be seen to be believed. From their high perch, the great green and gold peacocks with gauzy crests have recognized the homecomers and greet them with a raucous trumpet blast. The poultry run, which has been asleep, wakes up with a jolt. They are all on their feet. Pigeons, ducks, turkeys, guinea fowl. The hen house has gone mad. The hens are talking of making a night of it. It seems that each sheep has brought back in its wool, along with the wild alpine scent, a little of that lively mountain air that intoxicates and leads to dancing. In the midst of all this, the flock reached its shelter. There is nothing so charming as this settling in. The old rams get quite sentimental on seeing their nursery again. The tiny lambs, those who were born on the journey and have never seen the farm, look around with astonishment. The most touching of all is to see the dogs, those brave sheepdogs, all busy with their animals and seeing nothing but them in the farmyard. The guard dog can call them from his kennel. The bucket at the well full of fresh water can signal to them. They don't want to see anything, hear anything, until the livestock is home. The great bolt closed on the little latticed gate, and the shepherds sitting at table in the low room. Then, and only then, they consent to go to their kennels, and there, lapping their pans of soup, they tell the farmyard friends what they have done up there on the mountain. A dark countryside where there are wolves and tall purple foxgloves full of dew right to their edges. That's his arrival. That's what I fell in love with, both the language and because it's even more beautiful in French. It's really lovely.